in this video, we're going to do the ultimate Cyberpunk 2077 character tier list. So I'm here with the tiermaker.com list. I just picked one of the character tier lists at random. So let's dive into this and see what we've got. So number one, we've got Atom Smasher. Now, Atom Smasher is really important to the lore of Cyberpunk 2077. He's kind of a badass character overall. He's a cyborg. He's pretty much all decked out in cyberware, and he plays a really integral role in the tabletop lore, in the lore of the game, and then, of course, in Cyberpunk Edge Runners as well. So, really, I think Atom is an unparalleled character in terms of villainry in this series, and he becomes kind of like the boogeyman for Johnny and for V and for David as well. So we're going to put Atom Smasher in the S tier mostly because of his importance. Now, he is kind of a jackass, and I don't really like him personally very much, but undeniably a really good character for this series. Number two, this is a character from the Animals, the boss fight. I cannot remember her name. Sasquatch, I believe. Yeah, so this number two, we've got Sasquatch. I mean, it's just a silly boss fight that you have when you infiltrate the GIM with the Voodoo Boys. You fight her right before the Netwatch agent. It's kind of a fun fight, but overall, I mean, there's not much to the character. She's just a gigantic female with a sledgehammer who tries to smash you. Overall, we'll probably just put her on the D tier. Not a whole lot of depth to the character, and yeah, it's a fun fight, but that's really all there is to it. Number three, we've got El Capitan. He's here to talk about biz. I like El Capitan. He's got the mullet. He's got the purple jacket. He's a real over-the-top character. And some of the gigs that he provides you are actually quite fun. So he's not an S-tier character by any means, but I gotta put El Capitan in a solid A-tier. He's a lot of fun. He's got a lot of flair, and I like El Capitan a lot. Next up, we got Ozob. So we get a kind of a fun side quest with him, where we become a driver, and Ozob's defining characteristic is he has a grenade on his face. Yep, that's pretty much all there is to it. You go drive around Night City a little bit and fight some Tiger Claws with him. Hilariously, you can actually run away from Ozob during that fight, and you automatically fail the quest, and then he sends you a text basically saying that he's going to spread the word that you're a terrible merc, which is kind of hilarious. But again, not a whole lot going on with Ozob other than the grenade face, so we're going to put him in the C tier, kind of a middle-of-the-road character, really a one-hit wonder. Next up, we got Brigitte in the Voodoo Boys. Now, if you've seen my video on why you should side with Netwatch over the Voodoo Boys, you already know my feelings about the Voodoo Boys and Brigitte. On the one hand, the Voodoo Boys have a really cool aesthetic, and I really love the net running aspects of the Cyberpunk universe, so having this top tier net running group, that's really cool to me. But on the other hand, they're complete jagoffs to you, to Evelyn Parker, and like pretty much everybody else in the game. So it's hard to sympathize with them or really like connect with them because they're such jackasses to you. And ultimately, because of that, because I don't like them, I'm going to put Brigitte on the F tier for fuck 'em. Yeah, I really don't like Brigitte or her character. She's well written. She's well written to be a character that you don't like, kind of a villain. But overall, man, I just don't like her at all. Next up, we got Delamain. Delamain gives us some interesting quests in the game, and his whole plotline is really interesting. This kind of like completely AI-run, self-driving taxi service, and all of the little rogue Delamains that kind of offshoot off of the main AI core is super interesting. Like that quest line a lot. Overall, Del is just kind of maybe a slightly above average character. I mean, he's an AI, doesn't have a whole lot of personality. The quest line's super interesting, and obviously he helps you out during the heist, so get some points for that. But overall, I'll probably put Delamain in the B tier. Next up, we've got River Ward, our crack NCPD detective. I kind of like River. He's an okay character. I like the side quest line with him, but the romance seems a little forced and cringe, and I'm not a huge fan of that. On the playthroughs where I've done a female V character, I've pretty much always rejected River. So poor guy, he just can't get laid out there. He's just simping over V. Overall, I'll probably put River in the B tier. Out of the sort of like major NPCs that you interact with and have quests with and become like friends with he's one of the ones on like the lower tier in my opinion. Next up, we got Dexter Deshawn. Now, I got two trains of thought about Deshawn. On the one hand, he's badass. The voice acting's great. He reminds me so much of Rick Ross. And because of like those characteristics, I would really love to put him on the S tier. But then on the other hand, he's a complete jagoff to you in the end. He wants to give you a very terrible split for taking on a dangerous job. I think he's only going to give you, what, like 30% of the money? And he's taking 70% for doing not a whole lot, which is kind of scummy. I don't know what the other splits are with other fixers. We don't really learn that throughout the course of the game, but that seems a little low. And then obviously ends up betraying you when things go sideways, so not a huge fan of that either. That would probably put him closer to the F tier. But because he has so much bravado and because he's such an interesting character in that Act 1 phase of the game, we got to put Dex in the A tier. Next up, we got Dino, another fixer in the downtown area. Dino's another interesting character. He's always hanging out clubs. Kind of funny. I don't really remember his fixer jobs very much. I haven't done them in a while, so he's a little less memorable to me than like El Capitan, for instance, but he's a solid character overall in terms of fixers, so I'd probably put him in the B tier. We'll slot him just below Delamain. Next up, we got Evelyn Parker. I like Evelyn Parker's character a lot. I think she's really interesting. I like how she was in this situation where she was basically hired to scroll the brain dance at Yorinobu's apartment, and she decided, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to organize a heist and steal this chip myself. Lots of ingenuity in this woman, takes a huge risk. Obviously, her backstory ends up becoming very tragic in how it plays out, but I really like Evelyn's character a lot. The voice acting's phenomenal, the character design's phenomenal, and, her backstory and stuff is super interesting, and I like her personality overall. So, I would actually put Evelyn on the S tier. We'll slot her just above Adam Smasher right now. I know there's going to be some characters who will end up being slotted ahead of Evelyn, but that's where she's sitting at the moment. Next up, we've got Coach Fred. He's kind of fun to talk to at the beginning of the game. He sets up a lot of the boxing tournaments for you. I do not like the boxing matches in Cyberpunk 2077. I think the melee combat system in Cyberpunk is so awful and so unfun. I really hope they revamp it and make it a little better over the course of some of their upcoming updates prior to the DLC, but I don't know. We'll see. So, I don't know, because he sets you up with some shitty gigs. I think that docks him a few points, but overall kind of a middle-of-the-road character. We'll put him on the C tier for Coach Fred. All right, next up we got Lizzy Wizzy. On the one hand, Lizzy Wizzy, very interesting character in terms of her lore and story. On the other hand, the voice acting of Grimes, not very good. And I don't know, so I think Lizzy will probably get docked a few points for that, but I think her backstory and her plot line with, transferring into a chrome body, essentially becoming a cyber psycho, and the whole tension between her and her boyfriend/manager. Super interesting to me. I just think anything involving cyber psychosis and extensive cyberware modification is really interesting in the Cyberpunk universe. So for that, we'll put Lizzy in the B tier. We'll slot her just above the fixer here, just below Delamain, because Delamain's a little bit more likable than she is. Next up, we got Hanako Arasaka. Another pretty interesting character. Also, got some good assets, as we would say, but she's very manipulative and conniving in a sense. Like, she really wants to obviously use V to take out her brother and do sort of a corporate takeover. I don't know. I think it's interesting, her role in the Arasaka family and her sort of backstory. And she's a well-written character because of that, but it's definitely hard to like her. But we'll put her up a few points. We'll put her up in the A tier, I guess, because of that ass. Put Hanako in the A tier. Next up, we got Anders Hellman. I like Anders Hellman. He's a complete blustering idiot in some sense. Like, he thinks that he can really just steal these blueprints for Soul Killer and then just walk off to another corporation. I like how mercenary he is, where he's just like trying to sell it to the highest bidder. And I also like the banter between him and V and Takamura in the Devil's Ending as well. So it's fun roasting Anders. One thing I like doing if you do the Devil's Ending is like rejecting his deal and being like, goodbye, Anders, your deal was shit. That's a lot of fun. But I don't know. Overall, he's probably more in like a B tier character, so we'll slot him just below Delamain as well. We'll put him ahead of Lizzy. But yeah, Hellman's kind of a funny character and has a little bit of an interesting story in terms of how he stole, intellectual property from Arasaka and tried to get away with it, and then ends up working for Arasaka in the end anyway. Next up, we got Jackie Wells, and I know it, you know it, we all know it. Jackie's S tier. I don't think I really got to say more. Jackie's like one of the best characters in Cyberpunk. He's the best tomb, and it's just unfortunate that we don't get to spend a whole lot of time with him or do more gigs. I don't know. I think Cyberpunk would have been a little bit more interesting if we got to spend a little bit more time with Jackie. Maybe do a few more jobs with him in Act 1. I think that could have been really cool, but it is what it is at the end of the day. All right, next up we got Johnny Silverhand. Now, I don't know how y'all feel about Johnny, but I like Johnny a lot. I think Johnny's really fun. It's fun, roasting him and interacting with him throughout the story. And I do think it's interesting to kind of go two different paths in a playthrough, having a more antagonistic journey with Johnny where him and V do not like each other. I like playing like that sometimes, but I also like doing the playthroughs where Johnny and V are kind of becoming one mind, and that's kind of what I'm doing in my current playthrough with my female V Netrunner build. So at the end of the day, it's Keanu Reeves, it's Johnny Silverhand, he's a badass character, S tier for me, top of the S tier for me. I like Johnny a lot. Next up we got Judy, and for me, Judy is best girl. I like Judy a lot. I think her romance is probably my favorite in the game. I would say Panam's is very close, but I like Judy's better. Yeah, I think on one hand, she's, super savvy, super tech savvy, super loyal, but she's almost loyal to a fault. She definitely gets herself into some bad situations by not having a good read on people, so people like Evelyn and Maiko and other people kind of take advantage of her at various points because she, wants things to work out and kind of gives them a longer leash. But at the end of the day, I really like Judy's character a lot, so I'm going to put her in the S tier. We'll just slot her just a little bit below Jackie. She's one of my favorites in this game. All right, next up we got Kerry Eurodyne. Now, I've already made a video on this, why I think he's one of the best characters in these games. Kerry is fucking hilarious. Man, the whole plot line with him, like trying to do these like almost terrorist acts against the K-pop group, the Us Cracks, because they're doing a cover of one of his songs is just so hilarious to me. All of the interactions in that quest line are great. And I like his character a lot overall. And then, of course, seeing the more vulnerable side of him, he has some depth in terms of, not wanting to be seen as a sellout, not wanting to stand in somebody else's shadow like he did with Johnny in the past, and just trying to find his own kind of identity and way in Night City. I think that's super interesting, and that despite all of his success, he's still very insecure about himself. So I'm putting Kerry at the top of the S tier at the moment. Just one of my favorite characters for sure. I just like Kerry a lot. He's hilarious. He provides some good comedic relief in the game and ends up being just a really interesting character overall. All right, next up we got Mama Wells. I like Mama Wells. It's Jackie's mom. We interact with her a little bit in Act 2 after Jackie passes away. She gives you Jackie's motorcycle, and you get to interact with her a little bit more if you send Jackie's body to the family at the end of the heist, and you can do the whole funeral scene and whatnot. Yeah, I would probably put Mama Wells. You don't interact with her all that much, and you don't really get to know much about her character. That I don't feel like there's a whole lot of depth that we see with who she is and what her kind of motivations and whatnot are. We just kind of catch her in this moment of grief, and that's mostly how we interact with her, outside of a montage at the beginning of the game. I like Mama Wells a lot, though, so I'll put her in the B tier, I guess. Next up, we got Meredith Stout. Man, I like Meredith too. I find the interactions with her are great. She's super abrasive, but she's also very desperate in the situation she's in, having lost Militech gear to the Maelstrom convoy hit, and I just like that whole interaction with her at the car outside the like little secluded off ramp where you meet her, where she's like, "You thought you could blackmail me, bitch!" I just love that whole part. And then of course, if you end up siding with her, you can actually like hook up with her in a hotel and get this like sex toy melee weapon, which is just such a hilarious plot line. So I think Meredith really sums up that kind of like middle manager or like mid-tier corporate climber. She like has the exact personality you expect for someone trying to climb the ranks of a like paramilitary arms dealer corporation. So I think she's a really well-written character, and I will put Meredith in the A tier. We'll just put her just below El Capitan. Next up, we got Misty. I like Misty a lot. She's a very likable character. She's very friendly. Obviously, she's Jackie's girlfriend. I think she's a little too heavy into like the horoscope horse shit, but a very interesting character at all. Very interesting character overall. And I just find her to be really likable. So I'm going to put Misty in the S tier, actually. And I will slot her just above Adam Smasher, actually. You know, she's so helpful to V. She's the one who gives you the neuro blockers and everything to help with Johnny. You know, obviously plays a very pivotal role towards the end of the game, and you know, also like shedding more light on who Jackie was as a person because she had such an intimate connection with him. Next up, we've got the Netwatch agent, Bryce Mosley. So Netwatch is, you know, obviously I like to side with them when working against the Voodoo Boys, because the Voodoo Boys are awful. But, you know, they're kind of a sketchy organization too, so it's really a lesser of two evils thing. But we don't really learn a whole lot about Bryce Mosley. I mean, we interact with him that one time, and we know he likes Westerns, and we know he's really into the work that he does with Netwatch. I do think that Netwatch agents from their net running gear perspective are really interesting characters, like as a class of characters. If you notice the chrome that Bryce has on the outside, like on his cheeks and everything, or on his neck, that's actually like the highest level of net running gear available in the Cyberpunk universe. Those implants allow him to do deep diving in the net while still being conscious, not having to sit in a netrunner chair or an ice bath like we see with all these other characters. And that's what allows these Netwatch agents to be so effective at what they do. But, I mean, not a whole lot of depth to Bryce's character. I mean, we just meet him that one time. And, you know, Netwatch overall is kind of a sketchy organization that you probably wouldn't want to get too close to. So, and for those reasons, I will put Bryce in the C tier. Next up, we have Carol from the Aldecaldos. I don't like Carol that much. She's kind of a jagoff, especially when you first meet her. Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to say about Carol. I don't find her to be all that likable of a character. And so I'll slot her just above Sasquatch in the D tier. All right, next up, we've got Oda. The funny thing about Oda is whenever I hear him speak, all I can hear is Charles from Red Dead Redemption 2. Every time that voice actor pops up in one of these games, all I can think about is Charles from Red Dead Redemption 2. I mean, we interact with Oda very infrequently. He seems to be just like operating by this very strict moral code and is very interested, obviously, in protecting Hanako Arasaka at all costs, but is completely unwilling to listen to Takamura and V and their account of things. I do find his boss fight to also be kind of annoying, with the way he cloaks himself and stuff. I mean, it can be kind of fun, but Oda's a relatively interesting character overall, and the boss fight is hit or miss for me. Sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. But because there's not a whole lot of depth to him and we don't interact with him a whole lot, I'm going to put him on the C tier as well. We'll put him just below Ozob. So next up, we've got Padre, another fixer and the homeboy from Haywood. I like Padre. I mean, he gives us some pretty interesting gigs. but he's always got this like even keel, even tone way of speaking. Like he never shows really any emotion in dialogue. So I never really feel like you know what Padre's thinking. I feel like he's a little bit closed off in the way that he speaks to you. But you can have some really interesting interactions with him, particularly if you're a Street Kid background. He obviously shows up in the Street Kid intro. And I like that whole interaction between him and 6th Street at the beginning of the game. You just feel this presence that like Padre is not somebody that you fuck with. So at the end of the day, I'll put Padre in... We'll slot him in the A tier as well. Very, very kind of like interesting, badass fixer character. All right, next up we've got Panam. Panam's great. I found her really annoying on my first playthrough. She's obviously very like flustered and antagonistic in that first meeting that you have with her in the first quest line you work with her. But as you get to know her better and she reveals more of her story, she's very funny. She's very like loyal and has a lot of great characteristics and interactions. Voice acting is also phenomenal. So, and the romance is great if you're playing as a male character. Overall, I will put Panam just below Judy, just ahead of Evelyn here in the S tier. Great character. You know, for a lot of people, Panam is the best girl. To me, she's second best girl. But still really great. Next, we have the bartender from El Coyote Coho. I'm forgetting this guy's name off the top of my head. If you take the Street Kid intro, you have to take that shitty job from Kirk to try to bail this guy out because he's an idiot. Man, I cannot remember this guy's name at all. So for those reasons, we'll probably put this guy in the D tier. We'll put him actually up on the C tier. He has an interesting side quest called Raymond Chandler Evening, which I really like. I'll actually put him ahead of Coach Fred because of that, because I like the side quest that you get from him. All right, next up we have the Peralez family. I like the Peralez's a lot. They're really interesting. And their side quest and like backstory and everything is one of the best in the game, one of the most interesting plot lines in the game. And, you know, just the whole interactions that you have with Elizabeth and Jefferson towards the end of that quest line in particular, Dream On, phenomenal. Absolutely among my favorites. I'm going to put them on the S tier, actually. We'll slot them ahead of Adam Smasher as well. I like the Peralez family a lot, and they have, again, one of the best plot lines in the game, so gotta put the Peralez's in the S tier. All right, next up, we've got Placide. I know it, you know it, everybody knows it. Placide is in the F tier. Fuck that guy, I don't like him at all. He's well written in terms of being a complete jagoff, but man, he is such an asshole. I do not like Placide at all. Every interaction you have with him, he's just completely either like brooding or abrasive, and I just, man, he's well written in that respect, because I feel like the writers want you to not like him, especially once you take the deal from him. I think they want you to think the Voodoo Boys are cool but also hate them, and if that was the intention of CDPR, they did a phenomenal job in the way they wrote them. But I have to put these characters on F tier because I don't like them. Next up, we got Joshua Stephenson. Man, he's one of the more interesting characters in this game too, huh? Has probably the wildest side quest in the entire game, with him getting the sort of Passion of the Christ style brain dance recording where he gets crucified. It's insane. Man, that whole plot line of this guy who was a murderer who then like found Jesus and is trying to like make amends for the wrongs that he did. I find that really interesting. There are some parallel examples in real life. I mean, not to the extent of a guy getting crucified at the end of it, but, you know, you have all these guys like, I think like the son of Sam is like a born-again Christian and stuff like that. So I feel like they probably took some inspiration from real life real life people or real life stories to create this character. So it's not the most original in that sense, but I like Joshua Stephenson's character and his quest line a lot. And for those reasons, I'll put him on the A tier. Next up, we got Regina Jones. I like my girl Regina. She's great. Out of all the fixers in the game, I think she gives you by far the most contracts. Obviously, she's the first fixer that you have access to in terms of doing her side quests, because she's the only fixer that you can take jobs from in Watson in Act 1. She also gives you all of the Cyber Psycho whatever you call quests. That's also a super interesting quest line. So I like Regina Jones a lot. It's interesting, her background of sort of being a media and then going from the media to being a fixer, and kind of using her skills as a journalist to become this like top tier fixer is really cool. So overall, I like Regina a lot, and I'm going to put her in the A tier. I'll put her above Dex, actually. So next up, we've got Rogue. I know it. You know it. We all know it. Rogue is S tier. I'm going to slot her just above Evelyn as well. One of my favorite characters in the game. She's totally badass, has a great backstory. She has, obviously great lore in the tabletop game as well, and makes a cameo appearance in Edge Runners if you're paying attention. Yeah, I like Rogue a lot. I mean, no complaints. What else is there to say? I mean, she's really the top fixer in Night City, and she's also like one of the only mercs from 50 years ago that's like still alive and kicking, and she's been able to survive and do what she needed to do to kind of climb the ranks of Night City, and still loyal to Johnny, and has like a really badass appearance in the ending of the game if you go with the Johnny and Rogue assault on Arasaka Tower. I like that a lot. So yeah, Rogue's one of the best characters in Cyberpunk 2077, in my opinion. Next up, we got Mitch. I like the homie Mitch a lot, especially if you do all of the Aldecaldo's quest lines. I still think the quest is hilarious, where Mitch and V push Scorpion's body and truck off of the cliff and like light it on fire. I mean, that whole quest is like completely ridiculous. Mitch is a great character. I don't think I'd quite put him on the S tier, but to me, Mitch is going to be in the top of the A tier. Great character. All right, next up, we've got Saburo Arasaka. The guy's a complete jackass. I think we all know that. He's a megalomaniac. He's a sociopath. He's a psychopath, trying to become immortal, as we see with some of today's billionaires, trying to be, sociopathic immortals. The quest line with him is interesting, but he's also, if you unlock his diary, which is in his AV, on top of Yorinobu's penthouse suite, you find out that the guy wanted to like nuke Night City. He's completely unhinged, and the only person that kind of kept him in check was Hanako. I gotta put, because I don't like his character either, I gotta put Saburo in the F tier as well. We'll slot him ahead of the Voodoo Boys. I dislike him slightly less. He's a well-written character, but you only interact with him a little bit, but because he's such a freaking psychopath, we gotta put him in the F tier. Next up, we got Saul. I like Saul. Saul's a pretty interesting character as well. Obviously, he's trying to do what he can to make sure the Aldecaldos run well and are safe and protected. But he's also kind of becoming a little bit too conservative in his like older age. I don't think he's that old. He might be in his like 40s or 50s. I don't exactly know how old Saul is in the game, but clearly like him and Panam clash because he's not willing to take these big risks or big actions to make sure that the clan is able to defeat the Wraiths, for instance, or hijack a convoy or something to get great gear. He's not really willing to take on those risks because he's worried about what will happen to the people in his family. Overall, I think Saul's a really well-written character, and I like the interplay between him and Panam. So I'll put him in the A tier, put him just ahead of Dex. Next up, we got Takamura. I have mixed feelings about Takamura. On the one hand, if you sort of go the more like friendship route with him, where you start to respect him a little bit and even become more of a friend with him. I like the dynamic he has with V. I like the conversation that you have with him before you go hack into Hanako's float, like in that construction complex, where you talk about the corporate values and how corporations are bringing value to the world through X, Y, and Z, and then V counterbalances it with all of the things that corporations do that like make the world a worse place. And I think that that sort of moral conversation was really interesting. But at the end of the day, he's always going to side with the corporation over you. He's a loyal man to the end to Arasaka, so you can't quite trust him so much. I will put Goro in the B tier. We'll slot him just below River. All right, next up we got Blue Moon and the Us Cracks. All right, we got to put them in the S tier. We're going to put them at the top of the S tier, right? For simp. I don't know. No, I'll probably put we'll put Blue Moon. We'll put her on the S tier, I guess. We'll put her just above the Peralez family. She's just below Misty. I know my camera's covering this up, but I don't know. The Us Cracks are hilarious. I love their interactions with Kerry Eurodyne, and yeah, it's just kind of funny to see this. What are they called? Laser pop, I think, in the Cyberpunk universe. Instead of K-pop, it's laser pop. Their song is god awful. That Bubble Tea song, oh my god. Every time it comes on in the game, I'm like, no, it's so bad. But yeah, they're kind of a hilarious addition to the game, especially their interplay with Kerry Eurodyne. So yeah, we'll put the Us Cracks in the simp tier. All right, next up we got Victor. We got our homeboy Victor. Victor is S tier. He helps us out a lot too, so we're gonna slot him. I think I'll put him. I'll put him just below Misty. I think I like Misty a little bit more than I like Victor, but Victor's really cool as well. I mean, obviously he's able to give you the Karoshi optics on credit. He's always willing to help out V. You know, he's got that great friendship with Jackie. They like boxing and all this stuff. So yeah, I like Victor a lot. I mean, he's a badass character. He helps us out a lot. And he's always there to, you know, try to do what's best for us, even at the expense of his own business, because he's, you know, friends with V. So I like that a lot. I think he's a very loyal character, a very good character. But yeah, best Ripper Doc in the city, you know, according to all the fan base. All right, next up we got Wakako. I like Wakako a lot. She's one of the few 2077 characters who actually makes an appearance in Edge Runners as well, which I thought was really interesting. She gives you a lot of great jobs. If you do all of her jobs, she gives you an awesome samurai sword. She's had numerous husbands, numerous gang boss husbands in the Tiger Claws. But there's a dark side to Wakako. She's also, you know, responsible for selling off Evelyn to the scavs, so I don't know, that definitely puts her a little bit more in a sketchy category. But overall, I think she's very interesting, and she's willing to help you out, particularly with the Japantown parade so that you can get to Hanako, and gives you a lot of really fun jobs to do throughout the course of the game as well. I think she gives you the Bugbear job and a job to save another Netrunner, and a lot of the side gigs she has are actually really, really fun. So I'm going to put Wakako in the A tier. I'll slot her just below Regina. If she didn't sell Evelyn to the scavs, I'd probably put her at the top of the A tier, but man, she gets few points docked off for that. Next up, we got Yorinobu. Yorinobu's a psychopath. I don't like him. He's a jagoff, maybe slightly less awful than his father, but I think we all know that Yorinobu's a terrible character in terms of his personality. I will say, though, I don't think that Yorinobu deserves what happens to him in the Devil's ending. I mean, I think it's awful that his father overtakes his body at the end of it. That's like a fate worse than death, man. But yeah, that's pretty wild. But at the end of the day, man, Yorinobu is an awful guy and a complete psychopath, just like his father. So apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So there you have it, the ultimate Cyberpunk character tier list. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Big Dan Gaming for more Cyberpunk and RPG videos. Big shout out to all the channel members for supporting my content. Until next time, this has been Big Dan. I should go.